Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted you to see this beautiful scenery before I present my piece for today. This is Reflection Lake, and I'm standing in an area of the Gold Coast, at the northern end of the Gold Coast, towards Brisbane. That is generally, it's gated kind of communities in this part of the Gold Coast. There are a lot of golf courses. There's a lot of nice surroundings, as you can see. But one of the particular things about this lake that I enjoy is it's always kept nice and tidy. People respect the space, and they understand that the people who come to the little island behind me are coming for a specific reason, to reflect on those who've passed during wars and to pay respect at on Anzac Day, which in Australia is an important day when we, it's like Memorial Day in the United States, where we remember and celebrate the sacrifice made by those who have passed from previous wars. But today, you know, this is it's now a drizzly day. I suppose it's synonymous with part of the topic that I'm going to talk about, but it's important that we refocus ourselves back onto in being involved as human beings in each other's lives without intruding, but actually wanting to be emotionally connected to people when you feel that that's the right thing to do. I have a bag here which I'm going to put back on my shoulder, and it talks about kindness is always fashionable. Now, I bought this little tote bag in a tiny little store in South Congress Avenue in Austin, Texas, a number of years ago. And when I feel the need, I actually, and it's quite often, I'll carry this tote bag with me if I'm going to a supermarket, to a shopping mall. And it's sort of a subliminal way of telling people it's okay to be kind, and that it's not a bad thing to be kind to other people. And that's one of the underpinning characteristics of compassion, is kindness. Now, I'm getting rained on here, so I may move around a little bit to avoid getting overly wet. In my new model for peace, the acronym P.E.A.C.E, I've allocated meaning to each of those letters. And the C in peace is all about compassion. Now, I've thought a lot about this in the last few weeks, and I'm at the point now where I felt I needed to delay until I was ready to talk about this. Compassion is what we should all be able to exhibit in the right context with people that we feel comfortable to be compassionate towards. But if you're not compassionate, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. People who lack the ability to emotionally connect and who aren't able to deal with stressors where somebody might be very sick or be injured and they don't know how to deal with that, it could either be their lack of life experience, their lack of understanding, their lack of worldliness. It could also indicate an underlying mental illness that doesn't allow them, at a chemical level within the brain, to actually have an emotional response towards something that they see. Now, you know, the psychoses present in a number of ways. We know that people who are dangerous, who perform evil acts, you have to wonder, well, is there any way that they could ever feel compassion? And fundamentally, no, they probably can't. So we have to rule out those folks who are actually incapable of being compassionate. But compassion, as I have said for well over 20 years now, and I'm quoted in the Canberra Times, when there was an outgoing Governor General, I was a counsellor with the United Services Institute and a strategic advisor to them. I made a point then of saying compassion is the thing that humanity needs to get a handle on and actually start demonstrating more of. I'll give you one example of when I was compassionate without being overly emotionally attached. I walked out of a 7-Eleven where I bought a coffee, and this is probably going back 8 or 12 months now, and there was a gentleman around about my age, and his car was parked to the left of mine, and as I went to get in my driver's door, I noticed him sitting in his driver's seat, and he was patting himself from having been really badly hurt inside the store. So he'd gone in, bought something, and a shelf in that 7-Eleven had fallen, and there were really sharp metal shelves, and it literally had opened up the front of his shin. I think it was his right shin from memory, and he was just pouring blood. And the only thing I had in my glove box, and I normally carry first aid, was a triangular bandage that you use to create a sling for somebody. And I said to him, can I take you to a doctor? Can I take you to the hospital? What can I do for you? And he had a man-sized handkerchief. He was patting his bloodied leg, and it was soaking his socks. It was soaking the ground. It was all over the carpet in his car. It was just really hard to see, and I could tell that he was a little bit sort of in a shock mode, not full shock, but he was really quite, I could tell that he was concerned about himself. And I said, hang on a minute, I've got a bandage. Let's get this bandage around. You scrunch up your handkerchief and we'll use that as the pressure to close the wound, and we'll wrap the bandage around. And he insisted that he didn't want me taking him somewhere. He insisted that he was feeling better, and I left him to make that decision on his own. And so I gave him the bandage. We made it into a length, a rectangular length, and he could wrap that around and tie that off on his leg. Now, if I'd been a discompassionate person, I would have simply got in my car and driven off. So the difference is that when you see somebody in trouble, whether they are somebody you know, whether it's a total stranger, whether it's a friendly acquaintance, if you have a response at your heart level for that human being or that animal or that environmental situation, you are being compassionate to the suffering of another. So if we think in terms of humans, we have our own thresholds of tolerance, what we can cope with seeing. And obviously your compassion level will equate to those tolerances. If you see an animal that gets hurt on the road, if you have compassion, you might get that animal, keep it warm, take it somewhere where it can get help. If you see a bird that's got a broken leg, you might take that bird home and give that bird food and water and help it to get better, and when it heals, release it back into the wild. There are a number of ways that you can demonstrate compassion. But at a very simplistic level, compassion is so critical to the survival of our species. If we can't demonstrate compassionately doing things for people who are suffering, if we can't be happy for somebody's achievements, if we can't celebrate somebody, even though we may not get any kind of advantage in that celebration, then we're really losing it. We're losing the whole reason for us being as intelligent as we are. I've long talked about human beings being incredibly academically intelligent but emotionally inept. And I really believe that the more that people pay attention to listening to their heart, making decisions based on what they believe is right under all the circumstances that are presenting, being compassionate, even if you loathe somebody, even if you can't stand the sight of somebody, they might be, in your mind, your world's worst enemy. You might absolutely loathe the ground they walk on, but it doesn't stop you being kind and being compassionate if they are suffering. I'd like to leave you with that. It's a really tough topic, and it's something that I'll explore much, much more deeply in my book, The New Model for Peace, and my book on global peace, which I'm still writing. And I hope you have a really lovely rest of July. It's very cold here on the Gold Coast today. We've had a bit of cold, then hot, then cold again. I knew it would potentially rain today, so I'm going to be compassionate towards myself, get out of the cold, get out of the rain, and upload this to the internet. Take some time, if you would, please, and just think about how you are compassionate, whether you are compassionate. Look for the compassion in people. Be grateful when people show you compassion, and opt to be compassionate first rather than keep people at an arm's distance. Remember to risk manage, but if you see somebody hurting and there's something even tiny that you can do to help alleviate their suffering, they will be most grateful, I'm sure, and that is a good thing for you to pay forward. Have a great July, everybody.